Range troopers were some of the most elite troopers in the Imperial military. They were so elite that, in fact, they referred to most other troopers coming out of the Stormtrooper Academy as soft amateurs. Their training was very tough and intense, as they'd been deployed on some of the harshest environments in the galaxy. They'd be deployed in snowy environments with high mountains and would at times have to stay in the field for weeks on end without being able to get back to base. They'd be trained to survive on their own and in various different weapons, be it rocket launchers or their standard E-10R blaster rifles. They'd also be trained to be able to fight while standing feet overhead, sideways, or any odd angles, as they'd usually be equipped with magnetic gription boots in order to be deployable on moving vehicles. This could be seen prominently in the Solo movie when several of them would engage Han and the gang while on top of a high-speed train. So yeah, it certainly ain't for everyone to be standing upside down on a train that's moving at around 500 kilometers an hour and trying your best to shoot people. They wore a special vambrace armor and helmets that combined design elements from the Imperial combat assault tank pilots and shore troopers. Their heavy armor also featured external fur lining which should protect their neck against the environments they were deployed in. One of them also appeared in Andor Season 2 when he tried to shoot down the TIE Avenger and was literally obliterated into a million pieces. Having said that, I hope I was able to give a good view why these guys definitely deserve to be on the list, although on the last rank. Also, their armor just looks really friggin' cool, and their LEGO minifigures are some of the most expensive Stormtrooper variants there are. Death Troopers were black armored soldiers, serving as bodyguards and enforcers for high-ranking Imperial officers such as Grand Admiral Thrawn and Director Krennic. Their armor featured advanced systems, including encrypted communication devices, enhanced targeting sensors, and voice scramblers to intimidate enemies and to avoid their communication being heard by others. This electronic mumble can be heard a lot in Battlefront when you run around as one, as they just shout random stuff which sounds like someone coughing into a mic. Their recruitment was extremely strict, and only the best of the best were even considered for this role. They had to be at least 1.95 meters in height, and once elected, they underwent a myriad of different surgical enhancements that were supposed to increase their speed, agility, strength, and their stamina, making them something close to a superhuman. In the new Thrawn novel, Eli Vanto talks extensively about how much hardship the Death Troopers go through to become deployable in the field, as they'd be trained to fight in hand-to-hand combat and in several different harsh environments, be it in water, beaches, mountains, or deserts. A Death Trooper should excel in all of these. They were also trained to operate all types of weapons. As they were usually deployed in small squads, each squad member would specialize in each of these specific categories, from heavy weapons, demolition, guerrilla warfare, and sniping. To excel in their respective roles, they were armed with several different weapons. Each of them usually carried a mix of SE-14R blaster pistols, E-11D blaster carbines, and DLT-19 heavy blasters. They also carried sonic imploders on their backs. With all these skill sets, they are certainly some of the best troopers the Empire had to offer. It's a shame that they mostly served more as bodyguards than anything else, as I'd imagine an army of these guys would be a very scary sight. Then again though, without cloning, you might eventually run out of guys in the galaxy that are 1.95 meters tall or more. No matter though, they are some of my favorite trooper designs in Star Wars, but I feel like despite their clear strengths, I think there are other troopers on this list that'll likely outclass a Death Trooper if they'd ever be pit against each other. Purge Troopers were actually a term given to elite Imperial Stormtrooper variants specifically trained and equipped to hunt Jedi and other Force-sensitive individuals. There's also this droid from The Force Unleashed called a Purge Trooper, who is an early form of the Dark Trooper. But as we're just covering biological troopers here, we'll be talking about the Stormtrooper variant of the Purge Trooper. They acted as the primary troop enforcers of the Inquisitorius and were deployed in the aftermath of Order 66 to help eliminate the remaining Jedi across the galaxy. Purge Troopers were armed and trained to use an array of weapons tailored for anti-Jedi combat, such as the Magna Guard's electrostaffs and shock batons. They were trained to engage Jedi in melee combat and were quite successful at it. Furthermore, they were trained to resist Jedi mind tricks and could also use a variety of different blaster types. Purge Troopers were initially composed of clones from the Republic, but over time, they were replaced by conscripted recruits. They most notably appeared heavily in the Jedi Fallen Order game series, and they certainly have a spot as a sick-looking enforcer of the Empire. and are definitely well deserving to be on this list. I think it's hard to put them above the Death Trooper, but they're definitely a strong contender. Shadow Troopers were a specialized variant of Stormtroopers equipped with highly advanced stealth technology. Their black Stormtrooper armor was equipped with a portable cloaking device, rendering them almost invisible to the eye. Thus, they could appear out of thin air in front of unsuspecting troops and gun them down. Additionally, they utilized sound-dampening tech and helmet systems that allowed them to operate silently and unseen, making them perfect for infiltration. Due to that, Shadow Troopers used to be deployed for missions such as sabotaging rebel bases or retrieving sensitive intelligence out of any of these bases. They operated in small squads and overwhelmed enemies mostly by having the element of surprise on their side, appearing out of thin air and blasting down any of the enemy. They were also trained to use a variety of blaster like E11, DLT-19 Heavy Blaster, and also grenades like flash grenades. If the mission deemed it necessary, they were also trained to use jetpacks. Due to their covert role, they were some of the best trained units in the entire Empire. Shortly after the Battle of Yavin, a squad of Shadow Troopers even managed to kidnap Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa. Thus, I think this spot is well deserving as their cloaking technology just gives them a huge advantage over a lot of other troopers. Also, black Stormtrooper armor just simply looks friggin' sick. Storm Commandos, also known as Imperial Commandos, or Shadow Scouts, were the special forces of the Imperial military. The name Shadow Scouts came from the fact that their armor looked like a black-colored Scout Trooper armor. Their armor, however, far surpassed the regular Scout Trooper armor and was one of the Empire's greatest creations. First off, it was enhanced by a layer of Reflect, an advanced polymer that bent light and sensor emissions away from the surface. This feature rendered Storm Commandos extremely difficult to detect, allowing them to evade nearly all scans. The armor further contained a generator capable of producing a sound-dampening field, which meant their footsteps made no sound, similar to the Shadow Troopers. Lastly, each set of armor also carried a built-in personal shield, multiple hidden weapon slots for vibroblades, small blasters, and even a thermal detonator that commandos could trigger as a last resort to avoid being captured. They usually operated in small squads of 3 to 6 and were tasked to infiltrate enemy bases to kidnap or assassinate any high-value targets. They were picked from the ranks of the best in the Stormtrooper Corps, and it was considered a high honor to become a Storm Commando. Due to their specialized role, they were trained primarily for counterinsurgency warfare, with an emphasis on neutralizing rebel threats while they were emerging. Their missions often included siege-breaking operations, acts of sabotage and high-risk extractions, very similar to the roles that the clone commandos used to play. Beyond direct combat, they were also tasked with destabilizing enemy systems by inciting revolts against governments opposed to the Empire, as well as quelling uprisings that erupted within Imperial-controlled territories. In forms of combat training, every Storm Commando was trained to use a variety of different weapons, like pulse cannons that acted as snipers, a variety of different blasters, flamethrowers, and even rock launchers. Whatever weapons the Empire had, the Storm Commando knew how to use it. Some of them were trained as tech specialists and carried gear for that to hack and splice computer terminals. All commandos were trained to operate and pilot a wide array of the Empire's vehicles and fighters. The TIE Hunter, for example, was a TIE fighter that was specifically designed to be piloted only by Storm Commandos, and it was one of the only TIE variants that had deflector shields and a built-in hyperdrive. It furthermore had S-foils similar to the X-Wing and looked pretty cool. So yeah, what a resume. SCAR Troopers, which stands for Special Commando Advanced Recon Troopers, were special soldiers in the Stormtrooper Corps who operated specifically as small, highly trained squads. The most well-known SCAR Trooper squad was Task Force 99, which consisted of 7 very specialized individuals who all had their own area of expertise and were specifically trained to excel in their respective fields. Their members had a tech specialist, a sniper, a brute big guy for heavy artillery, a scout, a demolitions expert, a pilot, and finally a sergeant to lead the task force. They all wore customized armor that was supposed to help them excel in their respective roles, and they had the best training the Empire could offer. Their sergeant wore a red pauldron and reinforced Stormtrooper armor. The SCAR Scout armor had robotic arms to increase their strength as well as a big variety of different knives. The sniper was trained to operate a variety of different sniper blasters and could hit targets from a distance. He also wore this cool hood, which makes him look truly badass. The heavy artillery expert was usually a physically extremely big and strong trooper, and equipped with reinforced body armor for him to ram into enemies and also excel in hand-to-hand combat. The pilot had a jetpack, a remote control for their shuttle, and could fly any ship that they'd potentially capture, as well as any Imperial fighter or shuttle. The tech could hack into any systems and also was trained to use a jetpack. The demolitions expert could then use a wide array of heavy weapons like flamethrowers, rocket launchers, and such. As a team, the Scar Troopers were some of the best trooper squads and could excel at any mission they were sent on. Their members were all handpicked by Darth Vader himself, as becoming a Scar Trooper was deemed one of the highest honors among Stormtroopers, and the ultimate promotion. The leader of Task Force 99 was Sergeant Creel, who picked up a lightsaber from a Hutt's lair and went on to use it occasionally in their missions. This made him one of the only Stormtroopers to ever wield a lightsaber, and he even seemed proficient in it. That's why I think they are the most elite of these elite squads we've covered so far. Hazard Troopers were an absolute menace. They were equipped with some of the most durable and specialized armor ever developed by the Empire. Their suits provided complete protection from extreme temperatures, immunity to corrosive acids, and resilience against all forms of small arms fire. Each suit was also designed as a fully functional environmental system, capable of sustaining its wearer in space or underwater for as long as 3 days. The integrated life support reservoir contained a breathable air supply enriched with beneficial microbes to support the trooper's health during extended deployments. In addition, the armor could even withstand direct contact with a lightsaber to a limited degree. The Hazard Troopers were cyborgs, a fusion of man and machine. The recruits underwent extensive cybernetic modifications, having their natural limbs removed and replaced with mechanical prosthetics. These augmentations were necessary to operate the massive armor. The Hazard Troopers were usually armed with heavy repeat blasters or concussion rifles. Their almost impenetrable armor had one big downside though, as the wearer was somewhat slow. However, because of their insane armor, I placed them here at number 4, just shy of the podium as I'm not sure for which purposes they were deployed exactly. Coming into the top 3, here's the Terror Troopers. They were a prototype class of Stormtrooper engineered as part of the Imperial Department of Military Research's experimental projects. The Terror Troopers were the result of cyborg experimentation overseen by the Department of Military Research, and their masks were modeled after the look of General Grievous's mask. Each Terror Trooper was cybernetically enhanced, giving them incredible agility and speed that allowed them to evade and dodge the hits from beings as powerful as Jedi. Their hands and feet were also fitted with sharpened durasteel talons, giving them melee weapons built right into their hands. Their physical strength was also significantly enhanced through their cybernetic modifications, which allowed them to easily pick up any adult beings with ease. Even their breathing was supported by their Grievous-inspired mask, which were designed to regulate airflow and augment both their organic and cybernetic lungs. To further make them feared, they possessed cloaking technology similar to those used by the Shadow Troopers, meaning they were basically invisible to the eye and could appear out of thin air to make their attack. Only Force users were able to detect the Terror Troopers. They were usually equipped with stun weapons as their only mission was to capture high-value targets. However, they likely also knew how to use a variety of different blasters. Terror Troopers were incredibly great at melee combat and usually went up against Jedi and Force-sensitive individuals. That's why they're well deserving of this 3rd place spot on the list, as I don't think any of the other troopers really can compete with this cybernetic menace. The Zero-G-Assault Stormtroopers, or more commonly referred to as Space Troopers, were yet another elite subdivision of the Stormtrooper Corps. They were trained and equipped to board and capture enemy starships intact. For these missions, Space Troopers were outfitted with massive 2-meter-tall Zero-G armored exoskeleton-like suit that could directly connect with the standard Stormtrooper armor worn underneath. This armor was built to withstand the vacuum of space and was equipped with thrusters, allowing a Space Trooper to maneuver and engage in combat outside a ship for long durations. The armor, however, wasn't just simply a fancy jetpack. In fact, each Space Trooper was so heavily armed that he could be considered as a small one-person light tank. Their arsenal included a pair of shoulder-mounted grenade launchers capable of firing concussion, gas, or stun grenades. Their right gauntlet housed a blaster cannon, while the left contained a compact proton torpedo launcher. Both gauntlets also featured built-in laser cutters designed to slice open the hulls of enemy ships to allow them to board the ships. The armor was also resistant to light blaster fire, hence the name Light Tank. The Zero-G-Assault Troopers were in fact so strong that just a single one of them had the mobility and firepower to breach and commandeer a rebel blockade runner all on their own. Only against enemy fighters were they somewhat outmatched, as their speed couldn't keep up with a rebel A-Wing or X-Wing, and also most of their weapons were ineffective against fighters. Command ships, on the other hand, were definitely a prime target for these guys. So yeah, I think they're definitely one of the strongest units the Empire had ever produced, and well deserving of this second spot on the list, as I think none of the other troopers could actually go up against the Space Trooper in a one-on-one. Coming in at number 1, we have the Dark Troopers. More specifically, the Phase 3 Dark Troopers, although all of their phases most likely outrank the Stormtroopers on this list. Throughout their existence, there have been several iterations with the Dark Troopers, either being droids or exoskeletons worn by enhanced humans, which underwent gruesome modifications to create the ultimate super soldiers. The Empire created the Dark Trooper program, which was split into 4 phases, each building on the previous one. Phase 0 Dark Troopers were the earliest versions. They were composed of old clones from the Republic. Their limbs were removed and replaced by cybernetics, and around 70% of their body was made up of cybernetic enhancements. This made them incredibly powerful cyborgs equipped with jetpacks to fly around, arc casters, blasters, and an array of different weapons. However, the Phase 0 Dark Troopers were eventually discontinued and replaced by the next phase. Phase 1 Dark Trooper were the first step in the official Dark Trooper program. It was in fact not even a cyborg, but just a skeletal droid made of the lightsaber-resistant material Frick. The Dark Trooper was equipped with a vibrosword attached to its right arm, a blast shield on its left, and a small jump pack for short bursts of speed to enhance melee strikes. However, it wasn't really widely deployed. Phase 2 Dark Trooper were a far more advanced unit, outfitted with enhanced Frick armor plating, a jump pack, and an assault cannon capable of firing 400 plasma shells and 20 missiles without reloading. Additionally, it carried the arc caster, a weapon that unleashed powerful bolts of electricity. The Phase 2 Dark Trooper was usually an enhanced human wearing an exoskeleton, coming in at 2.82 meters in height. This version also became the most commonly deployed combat unit and was already one of the strongest trooper variants the Empire could deploy in terms of raw strength. Just one Phase 2 Dark Trooper could take on a unit of 20 rebel soldiers with ease. Finally, the most powerful were the Phase 3 Dark Trooper. It was significantly stronger than the Phase 2, as it had an armor that was almost impenetrable from blaster fire. It was the ultimate cyborg design, having the creative thinking, adaptability, and similar of a human, but was encased in a droid's armor made completely of Frick. This meant that Phase 3 Dark Trooper was resistant to most blasters, and even lightsabers to a degree. They were also equipped with twin racks of missile launchers concealed beneath their shoulders, as well as a wide array of different explosives, from concussion grenades to thermal detonators, making them the equivalent of a small tank. However, only 3 prototypes of the aforementioned Phase 3 Dark Troopers were created, and it was never fully deployed before the fall of the Empire. There were also the Phase 3 Dark Troopers seen in The Mandalorian, which, unlike the other Phase 3 Dark Troopers, seemed to be droids instead of cyborgs. Unlike the other Dark Troopers, they had built-in rocket boosters that allowed them to fly in space, and their armor was probably also made of Frick, as it was resistant to any blaster fire. To sum it up, the Dark Trooper program established the Dark Troopers as the Empire's most powerful foot soldiers, and are well deserving of the first spot on this list.